Seeing mind-altering trauma every single day growing up in incredibly violent neighborhoods. It's not a coincidence that the underperforming schools tend to be in the neighborhoods with high levels of gun violence, because even if you or your family member are not the immediate victim, fearing for your life every day of gun violence, it literally forces your brain to go through traumas that affect your ability to learn, to cope, to build relationships. That's why this issue is so vitally important. And what we know is that we need a federal solution. Guns don't respect state borders. In New York State, 75% of the guns that are used in crimes in that state are bought outside of New York, in states with less strict gun laws, where criminals can buy a weapon without having to go through a background check. And so in order to protect all of America's children, we need to pass universal background checks and close the Charleston loophole. Finally, it is hard to find a piece of legislation that is more popular than the American Rescue Plan. But background checks is supported by 90% of Americans. This issue has a reputation of being controversial, but it is only controversial inside the Beltway. Outside of Washington, Republicans, Democrats, gun owners, non-gun owners, NRA members, non-NRA members agree we should tighten our gun laws to make sure that criminals and people with histories of serious mental illness cannot buy guns. This is a unifying issue, and I'm so grateful to my House colleagues for bringing this bill to the floor early in this session, for bringing Republicans and Democrats behind it. We will work hard to achieve that same unity in the United States Senate as soon as this bill clears the House and comes over to our side. With that, I think I'm going to turn this over to the champion for the Charleston loophole, somebody who has been speaking truth to power on this issue his entire career, Whip Clyburn.
Thank you very much, Senator, and thanks to all of you for being Madam Leader, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much, Chairman Thompson. You know, I get a little emotional when I think about the Charleston loophole because there is nothing more sacred in the lives of most people than their church. And I think when you see what happened at Mother Emanuel Church, when people are really vulnerable. I was talking with someone a couple of days ago and reminded them that Martin Luther King Jr.'s mother was shot in church. And when we have these symbols of hate, these white supremacists, they tend to go after our churches, burn down the churches. This gentleman researched history and went after the most historic African-American church. And if people can't be safe in Bible study, then they cannot be safe anywhere. And what we had here was a young man who had no business having a gun, was able to get a gun because the wrong information was keyed in. Now, I will always believe that he knew the law well enough to intentionally give wrong information. And by the time they found the right information, he had the gun. That's all we're doing here is saying, give officials time to do the background check. And then, if he passed muster, get the gun. And I want to thank those who have been involved in bringing this bill to the floor. And I hope that once again, as we did before, we can have bipartisan support to get it done. And I'm so glad that on the other side of the aisle, Senator Blumenthal has agreed to sponsor this bill in the Senate. And he and I did a joint session with the widow of the pastor of Emmanuel Church on yesterday. I'm so pleased to present him to you now, Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you, Whip Clyburn. I am really honored to be here, Madam Speaker. Thank you for your leadership to Mike Thompson and Lucy McBath and Sheila Jackson Lee. Thank you for your extraordinary courage. And thanks as well to my great colleague, Chris Murphy. He and I have been a team on this issue since his election to the Senate, and Sandy Hook. You know, listening to Jim Clyburn on the floor yesterday, I was so moved because clearly 9 people would be alive today. Literally 9 people, members of that congregation, would be almost certainly alive today if that killer had not taken advantage of the Charleston loophole, a glaring gap in our laws. There is no reason that people should not wait a day or 2 or 3 to buy a gun so that a check can be done on them. And there is a principle at work here. The support for universal background checks is nearly universal. Almost everybody in the country, including gun owners, NRA members, want it. And the principle should be no check, no sale. No check, no gun. That's the way to make America safer. And I think with the leadership of our great leader, Senator Schumer, we have a real opportunity to make history here. I'm asked often, what has changed since Sandy Hook? We have a growing grassroots political movement with leaders at the local level changing history. And we have House members who have run on this issue, who have not just answered questions, they've made it a priority. And so I think the implosion of the NRA, the growing support among the American people, and the inevitability of increased support gives us an opportunity we haven't had before. We need not only background checks and closing the Charleston loophole, but also emergency risk protection orders, safe storage, Ethan's Law, repeal of PLCAA, a number of measures that provide a comprehensive solution. There's no single cure, but I think we can do it with the kind of support that we're seeing this morning, and I'm very pleased now and honored to introduce one of the true champions of gun violence protection. Or do you want to?
Yeah,
My mentor and model and leader, Senator Schumer of New York.
Who did I get ahead of? Thank you, whoever I did.
No, you're-
Thank you, Sheila.
Go right ahead, Chuck, my seatmate.
No, you were supposed to be earlier.
Thank God I didn't get ahead of Clyburn. Okay, thank you, everybody, and it's great to be here. I want to thank our great speakers, Speaker Pelosi, all of my colleagues in the House and Senate who have played such instrumental roles in this so important an issue. And I particularly want to thank the survivors and the families of the victims, and so many who have that horrible hole in their heart because they lost someone to gun violence. So many children on our streets gone. And yet these advocates light a candle every day. That's what the Bible tells us is the saintly and noble thing to do instead of just cursing the darkness. And I thank them as well. This issue is very important to me, as those of you who've been around a while know. I was the author of the Brady Law back in 1994 in the House of Representatives, and we passed it.
Yeah.
And there are literally so many, you could probably say certainly hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people walking the streets today because we passed that law, who'd be dead. But when we passed the law, it had, little did we know, it had some loopholes in it that we didn't know at the time. We didn't know there'd be an internet, so we didn't prohibit internet sales without a background check. And to get the last few votes, just a little history, a couple of our members from more moderate states said, just exclude gun shows. Don't put them in, because in those days, actually, gun shows weren't much. There were places where you showed your 1939 Derringer off. And of course, the NRA and the gun merchants and the merchants of death started using the gun shows as a way to get around the law. So H.R. 8 closes these loopholes. A universal background check. It is desperately needed. And the House, of course, has had the good sense to pass this 3 times? Twice. Twice.
Twice after today.
Oh, twice after today. We'll have the good sense to have passed this bill twice. And in the past, when they sent it over to us last time, it went into Mitch McConnell's legislative graveyard. The legislative graveyard is over. H.R. 8 will be on the floor of the Senate, and we will see where everybody stands. No more hopes and prayers, thoughts and prayers. A vote is what we need. A vote, not thoughts and prayers. And we will see where people stand, and maybe we'll get the votes, and if we don't, we'll come together as a caucus and figure out how we're going to get this done, because we have to get it done for the lives of the American people, for the safety of our streets, and particularly for our young kids, so many of whom in my state and all the states represent, mine and Jerry's state, and all the states represented here, whose lives are taken at such tender ages because of gun violence and guns. Senator Durbin will be holding hearings, and we are shining the spotlight on this issue. We are going to win on this issue. The American people, I'm sure it's been mentioned, are overwhelmingly, like 90%, on our side. So I thank the House for having this event, but more importantly, for passing the bill today, and now we will focus on getting it through the Senate.
Here, here.
Who am I supposed to call on?
Jerry, Jerry.
And now, my dear, dear friend of, since I knew him before he was an assemblyman, and he was a district leader, a powerful district leader on the west side of Manhattan when he was about 19 years old and just got out of Stuyvesant High School, Jerry Nadler.
Well, thank you very much, Chuck. I want to begin by thanking Representative Mike Thompson and the distinguished Majority Whip, Jim Clyburn, for their leadership in introducing these 2 important gun safety bills. I also want to thank the Speaker and the rest of the Democratic leadership for their support in bringing this legislation to the floor more than once. Since the House passed these bills more than 2 years ago, an estimated 80,000 people have lost their lives to gun violence. Every day that we do not act is another day that families will mourn the loss of a loved one. Every day that we do not act is another day that our homes, our streets, our schools, and even our houses of worship are at stake, because are less safe, rather, because dangerous weapons are in the hands of people who should not legally be permitted to acquire them. Every day that we do not act is another day that the American people, who overwhelmingly support background checks, you've heard the statistics, and closing loopholes in the law, lose faith in their government's ability to keep them safe. That's why the House is acting today to pass both H.R. 8 and H.R. 1446. And that's why we will continue to act until both of these bills are signed into law. Majority Leader Schumer, as you've heard, and President Biden have long been champions of legislation to prevent gun violence. I know that they will actively be working to send this bill to the President's desk. I hope, and you just heard Senator Schumer say it, that the Senate Republicans will work with us to save lives instead of standing in the way of this important legislation. We cannot afford to lose another day. And you know, we heard today about, Jim Clyburn spoke eloquently about the Mother AME Church, but there's also the Tree of Life Synagogue, there's also Parkland High School. There are all these mass shootings that these 2 bills will greatly reduce. There are also individual shootings, not just mass shootings, individual shootings. In New York, we have very good gun safety laws, but we cannot enforce them over the borders from states that do not have good gun safety laws. These two bills will stop that problem. So it will save, these two bills will save thousands and thousands and thousands of lives every year. And for that, we have a moral duty to pass it. We have a political duty to pass it, given the polling. And if Republicans stand in the way, they'll pay a price, both morally and politically. And now it's my privilege to introduce one of the leaders in this fight in the Senate, Senator Chris Murphy. Oh,
Sheila Jackson.
Sheila, what,
I'm going to
This is somebody else's.
somebody else's list. Sheila Jackson Lee, the chairperson of the Crime Subcommittee in our Judiciary Committee.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. The American people have spoken, and I'm so grateful that they've spoken, and our Speaker, Speaker Pelosi, has never stopped listening to the American people. Senator Schumer has never stopped listening to the American people. And we have gathered together to benefit from the leadership of Chairman Thompson, Whip Clyburn, Senator Murphy, Senator Blumenthal, and our conscience, Congresswoman McBath, who I have the privilege of serving with on the House Judiciary Committee. The precious right of the Bill of Rights, embedded in the Constitution, is loved by all Americans. And so as both Speaker Pelosi and Chairman Thompson and Senator Schumer said, we're getting a vote on the preciousness of the American people's rights embedded in the Constitution. Nothing in H.R. 8 or H.R. 1446 violates any part of the Bill of Rights. It does not violate the First Amendment. It does not violate the right to due process, and it does not violate the Second Amendment. Nothing in the Second Amendment suggests that we cannot regulate and provide safety for the American people. Nothing in the Supreme Court cases like Heller says that. So we are on the right side of the Constitution and the right side of history and the right side of the American people who are pleading for their lives. In our time, it cost $448,000 for every homicide incident that results in medical care or court cases. In addition, let me just say that I came here, and some of you may have gone down memory lane, just as Columbine was taking place. What happened in Columbine shocked America. Maybe we don't remember, right before the turn of the century, 2000. In that case, a friend of the boys that killed all of those students went to a gun show and bought a carbine and 2 shotguns. I'll never forget it. Madam Speaker, there was a Columbine task force, and I was on it. We thought that this would be the beginning and the end, and never have the opportunity to see that again. But it did occur over and over again. So I'm very grateful that H.R. 8 is 4 corners ready to go, and H.R. 1446 will say that you can pray in your church, and you should not have the violence of a killer like Dylann Roof come because the background check was not done. This is an important statement. Let us celebrate a vote in the House today, and yes, a vote in the Senate, and a signature by the President of the United States.
Thank you all very much. Are there any questions?
I know it's going to pass the House. We're expecting it to pass the House. How are you planning, or I guess this is more of a question for the senators on seats, to overcome the filibuster? It doesn't seem like there's the votes.
We heard what Senator Schumer said.
Yeah.
They're going to take it up. It's going to have its day. And if the Republicans do, can you imagine the Republicans standing in opposition to 90% of the American people? Yeah. But if they do, as the Senator Schumer said, there's other options that they will pursue. Anybody want to speak specifically to that?
This is an idea whose time has come. We had a majority of votes for a background check measure in the wake of Sandy Hook. When it failed, the cry from the gallery was, shame on you. If the Republicans vote against it, and there will be a vote, they will pay a price politically, because as the House members have shown very courageously by running on this issue, people are not only supportive, they're willing to vote based on this issue. So this is going to be front and center. And, I think what's also changed is we now have a president who can put pressure on our colleagues. And I'm hoping that we'll see that.
If you wouldn't mind, just very quickly. Listen, Mitch McConnell spent the last 5 years trying to avoid a vote on background checks because he chose the NRA. His members have expressed to me over the past several years that they want to get right on this issue. And so I don't think we should accept that there aren't 60 votes in the Senate for universal background checks. So much has changed. The political power of the anti-gun violence movement is infinitely stronger. The NRA is a shell of itself. And so I've had a lot of Republican members come to me and express their willingness to take a new look. If this bill's on the floor with 90% public support, with the power of the anti-gun violence movement behind it, I don't think we should be confident in the fact that there won't be Republicans who don't want to litigate this issue election after election.
Yes.
Just to put a finer point on that, Senator Schumer seemed to say, I know he's not here, but that there would be a vote on the House bill and see where everyone stands, and if it fails, then figure something out. So are any sort of, this is for the senators, I suppose, any sort of bipartisan discussions happening? Because when Manchin and Toomey got 2 votes previously, there were 4 Republicans both times. Only 2 of those remain in the Senate. So are Manchin and Toomey on board? Can you just talk a little bit about the process?
Well, again, I just think we are living in a different world than 2013. So much has changed. The politics around this are fundamentally different. I think, Senator Blumenthal, I should leave it to Senator Schumer to talk about the floor schedule. I just think that you can't compare 2013 to 2021. I think there are a lot of Republican senators that are thinking about voting for a proposal that allows them to get right on this issue.
Thank you. I'm going to ask our colleague, Congresswoman McBath, to close this out, please.
Well, I am just completely grateful for all of the hard work and for all of the effort that has been placed into making this happen today. And I would just like to take my hat off for a moment, the hat that I wear as a member of the United States House of Representatives, and to thank each and every one of my colleagues and leadership. As a mother who lost her child to the very gun violence that every one of us has been fighting for so hard to eradicate, Speaker, I want to thank you. Rep. Thompson, thank you for allowing me to be a part of championing this life-saving legislation. Rep. Clyburn, I spent time with you. I came down to Charleston after Emanuel, and I'm more grateful to be able to help you pass this legislation because no one deserves the kind of pain and anguish that people are suffering, especially those that have come to God and sat in church and lost their lives. Senator Blumenthal, Senator Murphy, Chairman Nadler, Sheila, thank you. You have been championing this legislation long before I got here. And all the times that I sat in committee hearings waiting for this legislation to pass and watching you time and time and time again put forth amendments that were shot down, for this moment to be able to be here with you, thank you for that. And as a mother, as a survivor, we thank you. There's so many of us survivors and family members that have lost our loved ones that have been waiting and waiting and waiting. And today we have the real possibility to make a difference and save lives. So I thank you on behalf of all the organizations, all the leaders, all of the frontline volunteers that have been championing for this moment. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Elbow.